In this episode of Deep Space Nine, we have our first contact with someone from the Gamma Quadrant. We'll talk about that after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and the race is called the Wadi. They come as a pretty big group onto Deep Space Nine, and Cisco and Dax are in dress uniforms, and it's a big protocol as to how you're supposed to treat first contacts. And they cut right straight through that and say, yeah, nice to meet you too. Where are the games? And immediately are taken to Quark's bar and proceed to play Dabo. And after a long night of it, they have more latinum than we've seen so far in the show. So this is getting Quark kind of nervous, and he rigs the wheel in order for them to basically quit winning. They catch him at that and then decide to introduce to him their own game. And the game involves all the members of the command crew. They don't find this out until Jake goes to Odo and says, "My dad is missing. Can you help find him?" And Odo is able to get to how they do it, but the why, of course, is a totally different kind of thing. And what it shows is mostly of the characters moving through this game of something like Clue, and as with any kind of board game, your end result is to make it to the end of the game. Now, all of this, of course, is wagered on, and Quark, about halfway through, is doing pretty well until he realizes that it's his friends that are in the board and their lives are in it, and he becomes a little more conservative in his betting. But that goes into details we don't need to talk about here. What's the show about? The character studies they've been doing so far, we don't have really much on Cisco, Kira, Dax, or Bashir in this, but a little bit more about Quark and how he runs his bar. The reason that we find that Odo is always keeping an eye on him is because he's not completely honest. He is certainly, though, not a completely bad guy. While he does value money, as Profringis do, he does not completely discount friendships. And so we know this now about Quark. He is absolutely groveling for nothing to happen to his friends due to his bad actions that brought all of this on. And we see something about Quark that makes him a little less one-dimensional than we've seen him before, and Ferengi before. This is the problem in the Next Generation. The Ferengi were brought in as kind of the new villains because we have a Klingon on the bridge, and therefore you can't have the Klingon be the villains. And for one reason or other, they didn't really want to use the Romulans much. And so they brought in the Ferengi to be the new big bad. But unfortunately, they looked more caricature than real and were quickly abandoned in the Next Generation and went ahead and just found other people to deal with, Cardassians and, for instance, and others. Now, of course, Romulans as well. So what we have here is and what Deep Space Nine did was it basically took what we had of the Ferengi and made them into something other than a laughingstock. While they have still a certain amount of comedy that's based on Quark's greed, we find out that while he may not have a heart of gold, he does certainly have compassion and concern for others. And because of this and this friendship that he has with Odo, it's they're not exactly enemies, they're not exactly frenemies. I think that they will show that they are one another's nemesis, but at the same time, they have a respect for each other in certain ways. So that's what I get on this episode of Deep Space Nine. I'd like to know what you think about it. Please put it in the comments below. And if you have not already subscribed, please do so. That helps out the channel. And click a like while you're there if you would be so kind. And until next time, tomorrow we'll have, of course, our retro review of Star Trek: The Original Series. And later this week, of course, we will have the Strange New Worlds musical. So until then, don't go far.